Welcome to the Marvel of Horror, where we discuss all things pertaining to the horror genre. I'm your host, your friend, fellow horror enthusiast, Bruce Marvel. And today, I want to welcome Buz from he's co-creator of The Living Corpse. We're going to talk about special effects and makeup today. And you actually went to, so it's the Joe Blasco School?
Yeah, the Joe Blasco School of Professional Makeup is what it was called.
Is that what you learned under Dick Smith?
No, I actually was reading Fangoria, and there was really no internet at the time, so you had magazines with how you learn about stuff, and or the library.
Yeah.
But so I saw an ad for Joe Blasco School, and I was like jumping around community college, and I was like, I really love monsters, and like I think I want to pursue this. And my dad drove me down. I had an interview there, showed him some portfolio work, and I got accepted into the school. And it was like a year program where you like learn makeup, kind of like Lon Chaney, like out of a kit, using foundations and latexes and wax and like the mortician's wax. So not a lot of molds or silicones or any animatronic stuff, like all the basics, hair work.
Yeah.
Not
Jack Pierce special,
dude, working with the cotton, working with the latex, powder paints, grease paints. And so it was awesome because I always loved all the old horror stuff, but here I am like right in the mix with the material, turning my classmates into these monsters, and then
super cool.
It was so much fun. After I graduated, I ended up working at Universal, the theme park, for a little bit. At the they have like the monster show there, the Beetlejuice Graveyard Review. This was back in the 90s, and so worked there for a little bit, and then it's a seasonal gig. So when I came home, I had learned that, well, the Blasco School is cool, but like if you want to make it in makeup, they were like, you got to take Dick's course.
Yeah.
And I didn't know anything about that, and so obviously I knew who Dick Smith was, but ironically, I believe Instant Messenger had started to come around for computers, and so I ended up sort of pen paling with Tom Savini because he's an East Coast guy. And I didn't know him like personally or anything, but he would give me, I found him on Messenger. We spoke for a little bit. He'd give me advice, and basically he was like, "Look, man, if you want to do this, you got to take Dick's course." And so I went out to California at a makeup show and stood in line for 3 hours to meet Dick, and showed him my work. And he immediately was like, "Yeah," he's like, you had to show him your stuff to get like accepted. He didn't just like willy nilly accept anyone. Yeah. Because it was a consignment course. So you got his home phone number and you were calling Dick Smith for like advice on the molds or what you were making. And I showed him all my stuff, and he was like, "Yeah," he's like, "You can have my course, no problem." And I was like super excited. And then the back of my portfolio of makeup was all drawings, like comic drawings and designs, creature designs. And he looked at the drawings and he was like, "Man, your drawings are really good." And I was like, "Thanks." And he was like, "Have you ever thought about like just doing the concept art and not the makeup?" And I was like, "Oh, are you telling me not to do makeup?" He was like, No. He was like, in Hollywood, there's specialists at everything. There's guys that are master fang makers or master sculptors or master applicators putting makeup on faces, So he was like, because Savini was always like, the more you know how to do, the more you're going to get to do. And so I tried to learn it all. But Dick was like, you kind of want to specialize. He's like, Hollywood only hires the best of the best for everything.
Yeah.
And so even though like low budget productions, there's always like a guy that can do it all. Here I am talking to the master, you know what I mean? Like, and so his advice really stuck with me all those years, because he was basically like, your drawings are good enough. You don't have to do makeup if you don't want to. And I was like, "Oh, I kind of want to do it all." He was like, "Well, that's fine." He was like, "But you want to be like a concert pianist, where you study piano all day, you practice piano all day, you go home and listen to people play piano, and you become the master pianist." And so when I left that meeting with him, I did get his course and I did take it. I didn't complete it because I did take his advice on the drawing. I did focus on concept and design. And then that's what led me back into comics and, creature design for films and things like that. So my favorite thing about cons and comic books and creators is the uniqueness of each individual person. Like, I like the differential between everybody and everything. You know what I mean? I remember we're 10 or 12 years into doing them, and we'd see something new and be like, "Oh, I don't know what that is, but that's cool looking," And I love the individuality. I think there's something for everybody. And but it's, comics are great because you can do anything. There's unlimited budget. It's a blank piece of paper. You can do whatever you want with it. So I think that's why it's still popular today, because of the ability to create within it.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I don't think comics will change and comics will evolve. And I hope they don't go there's other stuff going where they've been saying it for years, and I think some stuff has, but like comic books going like online.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that never, the Kindle didn't replace like the book.
Yeah.
So,
people are still collecting, and buying stuff and buying multiples. You know what I mean? Like the cover game is really big right now.
and I feel like what is it? I want to. Did Image or Top Cow is Image, right? They're like partners.
It's like a subsidiary of it.
I feel like Chaos and Top Cow are the ones we can really kind of point the finger at, but like they're the ones who trying to create like the cover game.
Yeah, Chaos did do a lot of like variants. I mean, probably upwards to 12 to 20 variants, like per book, and there's definitely like a FOMO in it. You know what I mean? Like you fear missing out, on something, so you want to buy all of them and stuff like that. But I think when you print a comic, you have the luxury of like stopping the press to do a different cover because it's the outside of it all.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not quite sure how it works, but it's sometimes you can get a deal with a printer where you can get more than one cover on your product. And so I think like the more these guys print with certain printers, they kind of get these better deals. Paper costs go up, so prices go up, but they have the options now to slide in and be like, oh, we want to do like 4 different covers for this one or 5 different covers for this one. But I know when we put our book out, when we first started, the only reason why we even put a book out was because everyone we were showing our artwork to was like, the best business card you can really give us is your own comic book. And we were like, oh, well, okay, we'll stop drawing your characters to show you and we'll just do our own. And so you go and you do your own stuff. And then you're like, okay, well, now we realize why they wanted us to do that, because this is the real work. And so you do the real work and create your own book. And we were like, no one has a clue who we are. They're not going to ever buy this. So let's make a blank cover. And then when we sell it, we'll draw a sketch of the character real quick on it, kind of like a little doodle as like a giveaway with it. And it actually worked. It took off, and we were able to sell 400 or 500 copies of it within a year. And then within 2 or 3 years, the blank cover thing kind of became like a staple, and other people were doing it, and then it took off. And now it's like a whole thing where, every comic has a blank cover, and some creators, a lot of fan artists trying to go pro who don't write or draw their own comics. They just do the cover sketches or the cover art. It's launched a lot of people's careers just from that blank cover and being able to draw on them and sell those and have that catch on.
I love when they do like the blank cover stuff, especially like I have a real cool. I think it's Detective Comics, like the 800th.
Yeah, they did a blank on
the
that.
real big one. They did the blank, and I have I just had this random Detective Comics cover of like Batman fighting Dracula. It's got nothing to do with what's going on.
Nothing. It doesn't matter.
But it's awesome. It's
cool.
I
think it's great, man. We were stoked to do it on our book, and when we started seeing like other companies doing it, it was kind of like fun, because it was kind of like, oh well, we like to do it, so I'm gonna go grab one of each of those blanks and draw that character too. And I mean, now Ken, my partner, made a career out of it. Doing blank covers for Dynamic Forces, and then now if people love your art and they want some of the original, the blank cover is a great way to do a piece of art, because you get a comic with it and a sketch. And
no, it's cool. It's definitely something like very cool for the fans.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what I mean? And like you said, it's very cool. Like if I was an artist, I would love it, because it's like, okay, well, I didn't get a chance to draw on that book, but I really love that character.
Sure.
This is something I can somehow still feel like involved.
Absolutely. Yeah. I collect the blanks now myself for stuff like that. There was like a limited Lobo blank that someone dropped. There's only 1,000 of them. That's it. So I was like, I got to grab one of those, because they're going to go away. So looking forward to drawing him on that at some point too. But yeah, it's always been a lot of fun. Every book we've ever done, we've tried to incorporate a sketch opportunity on the book, because it personalizes things. I'm a big fan of Stan Sakai and Usagi Yojimbo, And Stan
Nice.
always does the quick little Usagi sketch on everything, and I just love that. I thought that was a nice little touch. Walt Simonson does the same thing. Watching these old comic guys draw the character in like 5 seconds,
Yeah.
and it looked just like them. I'm like, that's the skill right there, to be able to draw that character that fast,
That's what I miss about like going to like going back to the Comic Cons. Like I miss like going up and seeing like when I was a kid. And I mean, he's still like one of my favorites just because like the nostalgia. But like I remember being a kid and like, and I'm again probably gonna butcher his last name. Is it Mark Texiera?
Oh, Texiera, yeah.
Texiera, he did like doing Ghost Rider.
He's
They
awesome,
were some of my favorite stuff, and just
he's
like,
another guy that will sketch standing up, in front
that's
of
what I
everyone.
mean. I'll never forget me and a buddy of mine because he was still doing Ghost Rider and I think like Sabretooth. Like Sabretooth and Deadpool have each came out. This is before Deadpool like blew up. They came out with like this like limited series in like the 90s, and he did the Sabretooth book. So
I remember that one, yeah.
Remember that
the painted
one?
covers.
Yeah. So my buddy Jose walked up to him and he's like, "Hey man, can I get a Robin?" Because he loved Robin. That was like his favorite character. And he was like, "Well, how about a Sabretooth instead?" And he just took his thing. Yeah, here you go. And don't get me wrong, my friend Jose was like, "Yeah, that's cool."
Yeah.
But like I would have been cool if I got a Robin, but like you still got like this badass like Sabretooth like head sketch he just did. Some guys
only want to draw like what they're known for or what they're good at. I asked Will Portacio for a Living Corpse. I have a whole sketchbook of Living Corpse sketches from like pros.
That's awesome.
And I was like, I'm not printing it, I'm not publishing it, I'm not doing anything with it.
It's just
for me. And he charged me more than he normally charges to do it because I was like, I really want it, and I really want you to do it. And his agent was like, he only does X-Men and like Batman, because I guess he was like he had just worked on Batman Confidential, which was like Batman versus vampires or something, and then he had created Bishop and did X-Men all those years, so he didn't really want to do like an independent character, but like kind of was like, I really want it, and I bugged him to do it. But some of these guys, they only really want to do like what their niche is, what they're good at, and they want to push that. I get it, I can understand it.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, Dick Smith, he has an Academy Award for Amadeus, but we all know him for his brilliant work on The Exorcist.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That's where Dick Smith comes from, and I think he worked on was it Altered States?
Altered States, The Hunger.
Yeah, two very very movies that don't get enough credit to me.
Yeah, they're very lowbrow cult stuff, but they hold up intellectually.
They really do. Especially like The Hunger's really cool. That's a really cool take on like vampirism. It looks beautiful. It's
David Bowie, Susan Sarandon.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually have the novel of that.
Oh wow!
I found but yeah, Altered States. It's funny because I was watching a trailer for that last night. My wife had never seen it, and she was like, "Oh yeah, Altered States." I'm like, "This is a very super intelligent movie that like I feel like enough people don't talk about it and they should."
Yeah, the deprivation tank and like going back in like an evolution kind of thing. It was definitely some wild stuff. I know he was it's like William Hurt was the actor. So he's like, morphine, and he's like up like that. And I had seen behind the scenes shots of like Dick working on the sculpture of him in that pose and the bladders to show like the breathing and stuff. So, what's great about Dick is, he was very diligent about everything he did. You know what I mean? Like he wasn't sort of to be a rock star. You know what I mean? It was like he was quite the technician and quite the master, and he was always very open about sharing like how he did things with people and things like that. So I think a lot of what he did gets overlooked, but you don't really have anything that like Gremlins or like anything you don't have without Dick Smith, because everybody that did that stuff, he taught all these guys how to do it. Savini learned from Dick. Rick Baker learned from Dick. Yeah. Like you don't have Thriller without Dick Smith. You know what I mean? Because he taught Rick how to, they all work together.
And like you said, those two names you just mentioned. So imagine Dick Smith was the guy who taught the Beatles how to play.
Sure, yeah.
That's kind of what that's equivalent to. That's those two guys, Rick Baker and Tom Savini. I mean, their fingerprint is on every popular iconic horror movie, I'm sure like there's some sort of like 3 degree of separation there, like
Mhm. Yeah, they also too would be presented with these scripts, and it's as a writer, it's really easy to come up with the stuff, right? You sit around and tick 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 and come up with it,
oh
but then
yeah,
you
but
got
it
these
actually made it
guys
work.
to make it actually happen. Yeah, and that's what's wonderful about Savini and Rick Baker and Dick Smith and many others is their innovation, like their ability to look at the situation and be like, well, we don't have to show this part. We can cut away camera to the girl screaming and cut back, and so they were more than makeup men. They were also the actor, the director as
Yeah.
well. Maybe not quite literally, but in those scenes a lot of times.
Yeah, they were they're basically like magicians.
They are
They
in
really
a little
are.
stage magic kind
You know
of
what I
thing.
mean? A lot of stage magic, a lot of like, okay, a little sleight of hand. We're gonna
Mhm.
actually make you, which I think, Hitchcock is famous for doing that too. It's like we're gonna make you think that you saw more than you really saw.
Yep,
And
absolutely.
it works brilliant.
And the less you show, the better. I mean, I think that's what the Universal stuff has proven is like,
yeah,
I mean, you always get a good monster shot and you always get, some cool landscaping, but they put so much in long shadows that the brilliance is the absence, like it's, this is kind of an off topic guy, but David Lynch was always like, I don't want to explain it for you. I want you to wonder what you're watching. You know what I mean? And I think your mind fills in better gaps than if you actually see it.
I think it does, and I think like and I was actually talking about this to somebody recently. I think like the older movies, why? Because the older, and I don't know if it's just I'm like getting older and it's like the get off my lawn kind of mentality I'm getting, but I am delving back into like the older films more than I'm actually seeking out newer films.
Yeah,
and I think because I think the older films have more of hey, we're not going to treat the audience like they're dumb.
yeah.
I feel like newer movies kind of
They do. They explain everything. Everything is over amplified. You know what I mean? It's like they're going for like adrenal reaction to stuff. I think what the older ones did is they try to do like a complete package for you. Like, at the end of this movie, you're going to feel this way, or at the end of this movie, and nowadays I think nowadays they just get too many cooks spoiling the soup on stuff,
Yeah. Well, another buddy of mine that I had on the show, he was even talking. I want to get your thoughts on this. After I asked you, like, what got you into the horror genre? Like, was it a movie? Was it a moment? Was it a real experience?
Ironically, it was visually, because a latchkey kid growing up from a television. It was Thriller, Michael Jackson's Thriller, because I grew up. I grew up in the 80s.
Yeah.
So when I saw, so I wasn't like that. I was kind of, everybody was kind of a fan of Michael Jackson stuff at that time. You kind of were, but like Thriller to me was on some other stuff. And then you find it, and then I saw MTV showed the behind the scenes on it with Rick Baker.
Yep.
And that blew me away. And what blew me away even more was that Rick was in makeup. He was also a zombie in it. He wasn't just some like artist technician guy who made everybody else. He jumped in. He got his feet, he got dirty with everybody with it. And I was so immersed into the process of making the teeth, the prosthetics, the paint, and seeing it all done, and watching Michael go through the werewolf transformation, and that Rick was showing like his drawings and developing it. It blew my mind. I didn't even really care. And obviously the Vincent Price part is amazing, but that laughter always sort of drags you in.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I think I was in 5th grade when Thriller came out, and that's what started it for me. And immediately I started like realizing that there were people responsible for this stuff. So you have Rick Baker responsible for the zombies, the ghouls, and the werewolves, then the cemetery stuff. And you've got John Landis, American Werewolf in London, making this film. So for me, I was like, oh, there's people that do this. You know what I mean? And that started the fascination. And I think it evolved from there into probably like Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
With as I picked up on that a little later. Obviously didn't see part 1 when it came out. I was a little young, but going back, but I think I saw 3 first. And you're starting to get the humor and like the music. And I just love the idea that horror movies could be entertaining in a way where, there's shocking stuff and scary stuff, but it was still funny and kind of like, so over the top that, okay, it's not real. You know what I mean? So like, I've always been more into fantasy and imagination than I was into like brutal reality. You know what I mean? So some of the torture horror doesn't really kick for me, where I would rather watch character horror, you know.
Yeah, like give me monster. Like I love monster movies. I love ghost stories. That's like
those are
my
great.
favorite
Yeah.
stuff. And like obviously a guy who like even as a kid in the '80s loved all the Universal stuff and saw that first before he got into like slashers and the stuff that was big.
That was current at the time.
Oh yeah, I remember like. See, like I heard the Alice Cooper song first.
Oh yeah.
Seeing like Friday the 13th
Yeah.
Part 6.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, he's basically like a hammer mummy.
Yeah.
At that point, he's just
Yeah.
such an undead killing machine. Finally, they really actually made him Frankenstein's monster.
Yep.
But no, that's super cool, man. Because because I remember, every Thriller was huge.
It was massive. Yeah.
And that makeup to this day
still holds up.
Oh my god!
Yeah,
still
people are
looks
recreating
amazing.
it. You know,
Yeah.
they're doing like busts on it now. They're doing like complete reimaginings of it.
In my humble opinion, it's still better than any like CGI stuff that I see.
Yeah.
That's that's what me and my buddy Andy were talking about, because we were kind of giving like our review on like the new Evil Dead movie, Evil Dead Rise, and I kind of asked him. I said, "What do you think about monsters and effects and stuff like that?" And he was like, "Honestly, man, take the money out of it. Kind of take the money out of it and go back to like this, like those effects." And I'm like, yeah, I kind of agree with that. I think
You can do a lot with smoke and mirrors, as they call it.
Yes.
So light and magic, light makeup, light and magic. When you see glamour stars out of makeup, they're not beautiful, but it is a different thing. How they look out of makeup, how they look in makeup, all done up. So if you and I believe like Werner Herzog was telling the Mandalorian people, because he was the one hunting for Grogu, the old guy. He directed the Nosferatu from the 70s.
Yeah.
With Klaus Kinski. They asked him, they're like, should we do a CGI Baby Yoda or should we do a puppet Baby Yoda? And he was like, don't be a coward. Do the puppet.
Yeah.
Because the old Yoda still holds up. You know what I mean? Like when you see the physical puppet. So for me, I feel like you can do more with contact lenses and teeth in a character than you can with CGI in anything.
Yes.
So if you look at some of them Fright Nights, the first reveal is the contacts in the teeth. There's no prosthetics yet. None of it. It's just they're starting that change. You know what I mean? And so it's more. I think it's just scarier when it's right there in front of you than if you're going to fill it in with, digital later. Digital later is easy for them. Digital later is less work, I guess. There's still work involved, but it's kind of like waiting for the makeup to be done, making sure it looks good in the lighting. Like that's all that extra effort that they'd like to probably nix out of the production, but it lasts longer. People are still watching these black and whites because of that reason. Well,
even like you going back with a little bit of teeth and contacts, it's like, okay, well, that hammer scene with Christopher Lee is
still haunting.
You still it's in every horror magazine, like top 100 moments
the
of
images,
time.
the t-shirts.
People are getting that tattooed all the time. Like that image is just burnt. And like you said, it's
the bloody eyes.
The bloody eyes. The bloody eyes and the teeth and just that look. And it's like that image is just seared into people's minds forever.
I always think back to Planet of the Apes, the original, because it's a guy in makeup, but you're invested in the movie, you're watching the movie. And you're like, I don't know if he's mad and going to bite me in the neck or if he's contemplating humanity. You know what I mean? Like, because the character in the makeup is casting the drama. You know what I mean? And so you get that make you think moment by looking at it. And I don't know. I always felt like even though they kind of look hokey to some people in the Planet of the Apes stuff, I always felt like more intimidated by it because it was like they're right there. The CGI, like you guys mentioned Frighteners on your first episode.
Yes.
And like it's a great movie. The CGI doesn't hold up with like in the walls and stuff.
Unfortunately, it does not. You're absolutely right.
Imagine if they had shot that kind of like Prince of Darkness, where there's more mirror tricks and practical effects and less CGI, like Prince of Darkness still holds up.
Yeah.
But watching Frighteners is Jeffrey Combs' performance is worth watching.
Yeah.
But the CGI doesn't hold that well.
Well, even like Boris Karloff to me was the best. Boris Karloff was the best of a guy being in makeup and being able to like display the spectrum of emotions. I mean,
he had a lot of characters.
Yes, he did, and he was great. But like even so, let's take werewolves for a second. Like I still think. I mean, here it is. I believe what American Werewolf in London was 1981, right? Or 90,
Yeah.
Right? Here we are. It's 2023. And I still think a lot of people would probably still agree that werewolf transformation scene is better than any werewolf movie I've seen in the last 20 years.
Yeah, because if you're looking at Wolfman with Benicio del Toro, which is originally a Rick Baker thing, and then I think he dropped off of it. There's still the CGI with the bones breaking, and it's kind of like, all right, I'm looking at a cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at like Dog Soldiers, if you've ever seen that, where it's like the tall guys on stilts and the wolf heads, the lupine, like that's intimidating. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's cool. It's done really well, and like I said, there's so many. Like you said, you could do a lot if you just know how to shoot that camera with that.
Yeah, well, that's what the Universal stuff and the black and white silent film stuff still have a lot to teach filmmakers today, because I mean they're constantly stealing the shots. How many people have used the Nosferatu shadow hands coming across the wall? It's a staple. So you have these films that become these iconic films not only because they're iconic and they've been seen for years, but because they're the beginning. They are where the films start. Like film starts there, you know. So the original techniques are always going to hold. Like Ray Harryhausen and like miniatures, those are always going to hold up. You know, like the movie The Gate with the little guys.
Oh
right
yeah,
there, you know what I mean?
I remember. Like, I was just talking about that movie.
Yeah, like I can still watch it because like they're practical and they're there. You know what I mean? And like the CGI, it's cool for certain stuff, and obviously you need it for certain things, but those black and white films, they're the blueprint, I think.
I totally agree. And and it's funny. So me and my oldest brother were talking. One of his favorite movies of all time is Clash of the Titans, and we were talking about how I'll go back and watch the original Clash of the Titans before I watched that one that came out 10 years ago. Yeah. And we were talking about like the Medusa scene. The Medusa scene is so much creepier, and better, even though you know it. You can see it stop animation.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at the new one, it's moving so fast that it like you said, it just looks like
too slick.
It's too slick.
Yeah,
that one's actually creepier.
Yeah, I think a lot of people remaking the stuff. It's always about like this is the next best thing. Like this is the 2021 vehicle, but the 2022 vehicle's got this.
Yeah.
And so when they do these movies, they sort of look at them like that. They're like, oh, well, that was the old days, and we're going to do this now. It's going to be so much better. And, a lot of people behind, getting things moving forward production-wise, I don't really think, and Rob Zombie said this when he was trying to sell House of a Thousand Corpses, which no one liked when it came out, and now everyone loves. And what he said was he's in the room with these producers. They're basically, he's trying to explain like what his movie is like, because it's kind of this hodgepodge thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, oh, it's a lot like, Last House on the Left, or like, he's like all these like grindhouse movies he's trying to. Nobody at Universal or behind that board meeting has seen any of these movies.
Yeah.
And he knows it. He knows talking to them, like they have no idea what I'm talking about. And that's why there was so much conflict over his film, is because a lot of people who make and fund the stuff aren't fans. They're not. Yeah. I would be going out on a limb and say that most of the people who funded our comic and film never read our comic.
Yeah.
And that's where you lose out a lot of times.
And I think you're seeing that on a much larger scale with like the comic stuff and even some of the horror stuff. Like you've never gone back and even like looked at the source material.
It all comes from somewhere.
It does all come from somewhere. And it's all rooted in something that made people want to see it on the big screen to begin with.
And there's just some ethics in it. You got a lot of nods to the original and the new Evil Dead film, and which is always like people. It's like a little cookie you get when they're like Dead by Dawn. You're like, oh, it's that Dead by Dawn. Mm-hmm. But like is the story well written? You know what I mean? Like, do the effects hold up? And there's a reason why people are still watching, part 1 and 2 and 3,
Yeah.
because there is a lot of practical stuff, or trick screen work that is basically Raimi utilizing old black and white techniques in a color format. And when you get into the CGI and like the mouth dropping through CGI, you know what I mean? Like, I would rather see a mechanical, and like do the howling transformation scene where it's like it looks painful and distorted and weird.
Yes. Yes. Like, it was a horrible movie and I hated it. I liked the idea of the werewolf transformation in like the Van Helsing movie.
Yeah.
But like I
cartoony.
Yeah, I mean,
all of a sudden he peels out the skin and he's
try watching it now.
It's cartoony.
It's very bad. It's very bad. But
I just watched it recently too.
Yeah.
Because I was a fan of it when it came out, and I'll watch anything. If you trap me in a room, I'll watch anything. But I'm watching it, and I'm like, oh, I love Kate Beckinsale's character, and I love Hugh Jackman, and
I love the Vampire Brides.
The Vampire Brides are great, but some of the Frankenstein stuff is cool. But yeah, when you start layering that CGI in there, it's a ticking time bomb for how long your movie's going to be cool.
Yep,
and eventually it won't be cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a short fuse. It's going to burn very fast.
It all starts looking like Lawnmower Man at the end of the day.
Wow, talk about Whew.
I worked in a video store, so my knowledge is a little bit about everything, not a lot of bit about anything. But it's like working in a video store was great in the 90s because you just had access to all of it.
See, if I could go back in time, I think I would have done that. Now knowing what I know now, because that would have just been
It was a blast, yeah.
You know what I mean? That would have just been like a great time. And I would have, because I always laugh. It's like I have a horror podcast, but it's like you'd be surprised there's so many movies I have not seen.
Yeah. Same here, man. I was worried. I was like, man, Bruce is going to ask me about something I haven't watched in a while, and I'm not going to know.
Oh, man, I'm telling you, like if people actually watch this, I'd probably get lit up in the comments section a lot.
Yeah. You know what? It's an open conversation. That's like the Nosferatu one where you guys mentioned the typo negative. I have that VHS.
Do you have? Oh, great!
Yeah. And it was at working in a video store. They had like $5 bins or $10 bins and like stuff that didn't rent. No one was renting it, so they would just sell it to make room for 100 more copies of Steven Seagal's Under Siege or something like that.
Talk about her.
Yeah, that's what it would be. They would have like Blockbuster would have like 100 copies of Under Siege and like 1 copy of Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
I know.
And whoever rented it never returned it, and so the box is there and the video is never in stock.
I remember, like, I'll never forget. I don't know what happened, but back in 95, 96, I was really I just started high school and I was really getting into like VHSs. And I wanted horror movies on VHS. That's kind of what I was really after. And for some reason, I don't know if they were just like kind of what was going on, but you couldn't get a copy of John Carpenter's Halloween.
That's a tough one, yeah.
It was a tough one to get. You couldn't get it if you didn't see it on TV. If you didn't have a copy or you didn't see it on TV. So I remember Blockbuster put out like a Blockbuster exclusive.
I remember that.
Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And man, I wore that tape out.
Yeah.
But that was for the longest time. That was all I had.
That's all it was. Yeah, I mean, I got the TV guide, and I like scour the TV guide, a little thing at the grocery store, and be like, oh, they're gonna play, Planet of the Apes at 6:00, and then I would try to like write myself a note to remember to watch it, and then eventually years went by, we got a VCR, and then I would try to record the stuff.
Yeah.
The way you have shelves of collectibles in here, I had shelves of tapes.
Yeah.
And I would watch everything and I still have a lot of tapes. And now there's a whole VHS resurgence now with Lunch Meat magazine. I don't know if you've seen that, but
no,
a friend of mine started this magazine called Lunch Meat, and he might be on issue 12 or 13, but they're at the Mahoning Drive-In this weekend at
my friend Sarah is going to show
the
VHS Fest. Yeah, a little cool. That statue like Godzilla is there. I was like, oh, her tent's like right across from it.
It's a really cool scene. I like how people are sort of taxed on streaming and sort of overwhelmed on what to watch. You know what I mean? Like psychologists have proven that there's a nurturing factor in watching something that you've seen 100 times already, because it's kind of like safe. You know what you're going to see, rather than investing an hour of your life into something that you're going to be like, well, that sucked. I didn't like that. You know.
Yeah, me and my brother Jay, because he was laughing because I always talk to him like, yeah, by the time when I even get time to actually watch something now, I'll be surfing forever to figure out what you're going to pick. Yeah, and I'm at the point where it's like, time is your currency. Mm-hmm. If you're going to throw 2.5 hours away, you better be worth something.
You want it to be something you really want to see, yeah.
And he's like, he's like, dude, now you understand why, like, I'd rather go home and just throw on something
that you like.
I haven't seen, because one, I'm so tired. If I fall asleep, I didn't miss anything.
Yep. Yeah, and it's not like, you're going to see a spoiler for an old movie. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to see a spoiler for a new show the day after it comes out.
It's so cool, like, my sister-in-law, who's like she's like probably 10 years younger, but her and her sister and my wife have like kind of reconnected. They were never like not close, but they're hanging out, spending a lot of time together more now that they're older. Mm-hmm. She's always coming over and she's like, yeah, I've never seen this movie. It's like, and they're all movies I've seen a million times, but it's like, now it's cool to actually sit down and watch these movies with someone who's never seen them.
Yeah.
Like, Friday night we watched Black Sunday.
Great movie.
And she did Mary Baba, baby. Yeah. And she had never seen it.
Yeah.
So it was just like
phenomenal movie.
Oh yeah. And I have a nice Blu-ray copy of it, which you never would have got.
Yeah.
Back in the
never would have got that.
There's a movie you never would have saw in a Blockbuster.
You barely even could rent that thing. That you would have to get that on tape, like at a secondhand market store or something.
That was not hot. Yeah, that was something that, like, back in the day, you had to go to like
a drive-in
to
catch it,
or you had to go to like a chiller and go to like someone at a table had a copy of it, and it probably wasn't a good copy.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff was bootleg, but that's how you got it. Like I got a lot of stuff that way. I'm trying to think of like a lot of early Clive Barker stuff, like Rawhead Rex and. What else did he do? Like, he's got one called Salome and the Forbidden. It's like his first film. It's like a student film, and like Buck Bradley.
I've never seen it, but I know what film.
I'm like, Clive Barker. I've never heard of this film. It's on VHS. I'm like, this is where the gold comes in. You start finding stuff that, like, you're never going to see it on TV. It's never going to be in the theater. What I mean? The VHS market really opened up the world to these films for the current living generation now, because I think my father said when he was a kid he saw Creature from the Black Lagoon in the theater, but like I would never see it in the theater. It wouldn't be out. So the re-release on the toys, the re-release on the VHSs, you'd go to like the dollar store and it'd be like this collection of black and white movies in a VHS set for $5, and it's like Roger Corman's The Terror, with Nicholson, and you're getting The Mummy in there. And now, of course, they're back to being cool, so they're like they're gonna pay to see them again. But
now they're doing like 4K restorations and stuff. But I remember going back to what you're saying. It's like I remember having Creature from the Black Lagoon on VHS, but I also remember having to go to like Suncoast Video or something and pay a lot of money for it.
Yeah.
And
top dollars.
And and you were hard if you wanted like getting Creature in the Black Lagoon, but like getting Creature Walks Among Us and Revenge of the Creature, they were like even harder to get.
They're harder to get. Yeah, they'd have like one copy of them, and then there's just as many horror nerds out there as me and you, and so I would always run in and be like, it was here last week and now it's gone, and somebody bought it or.
Yeah, and it's like you go in and it's like you only have like $25. Because they're like VHSs were like. The stuff we were after is like $20 to $30 if you went to because like Suncoast Video or something was the only place that had them.
Yeah, that was the market. You're looking at like almost before DVD, where it's like $40 for a VHS tape. You know what I mean? And you're getting to view it at home as many times as you want until the tape wears out. So I guess it kind of is worth it if you look at the price of a movie ticket to how many times you're watching the VHS. Yeah. Now. VHS is so it's like trending. I think that, like some tapes are hard to find. Like they're like I think Chopping Mall is like a $200 tape now.
What?
Yeah,
It's a great movie, by the way.
I love the movie.
I love that movie.
But I mean, I don't know if I'm paying $200 for a VHS tape.
I'm not. I'll wait. Like that will come on Shudder eventually if it's not already, and I will watch. But I would love to have like a that's something I would totally get like a DVD or Blu-ray copy of.
Yeah, like a 4K shot factory of that would be rad.
Yeah, I would like. So I had a friend on named Gene Zelak, and we were talking that because he was like, "Yo, do you still get a lot of physical media?" I said, "Absolutely.
Yeah,
I still get like physical, and now is the best time. I mean, there's so much stuff now. Like
you can get anything you want now.
you can get anything you want now. You can get anything you want. Anything you thought that wasn't available is. And I think there's only like some random movies here or there. Like I think there was some
Fright Night 2 was one that no one could get for a while, and now they're doing a 4K release on it.
Yeah,
because it had been talked about for a while that you couldn't stream it. It was all on YouTube in its entirety, but you don't want to watch these movies this small.
Yeah, absolutely. And Fright Night 2 is actually Fright Night 2 is actually a really good sequel.
I like it.
I mean, obviously
it picks right up after 1.
Yeah.
And it evolves the characters. You get another monster bunch. You know what I mean? And Charlie's still there.
It's got my man who's I forget his name, but he's the werewolf in Monster Squad. And he's like a werewolf in this movie.
Yeah.
And that's another. So Monster Squad, I did an episode on. But that's another like cool transformation scene that's really good.
Yeah.
You don't see a lot.
Yeah.
But his acting,
they just show you the right stuff.
They show you the right stuff.
Again, Monster Squad, you're looking at, what is it, Fred Decker?
Yeah.
And you've got Tom Woodruff playing the Gill Man, who was also played Pumpkinhead. And Woodruff is teammates with Alec Gillis at ADI, which are all Stan Winston's guys.
So
you've got like the best of. You've got the guy that did the Predator and the Alien. I was
going to say, there's
doing the Monster Squad guys.
Yeah, and they looked great.
They still hold up to this day. Yeah.
Like I think if I was those guys and I watched Monster Squad, I'd be like, come on, man, you could put the Gill Man in this movie a little bit more.
Oh, I'm sure they wanted to. Yeah.
He looks so cool, and
Yeah.
all those guys look like super cool.
I wonder if there's like extra footage for Monster Squad. If there's anything like extra stuff that hadn't been seen before. I don't know like how much was on the cutting room floor of that, but it definitely holds up over time because they're practical. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're standing right there. You know what I mean?
Those monsters in that movie still look fantastic.
I love them, man.
I mean,
they look great. I'm a big fan of that one, and I think it's another one that probably was trying to capitalize on like the Goonies, but maybe at the time kids were more into alien stuff and not the classic monsters. But
yeah,
I'm glad that the film exists. There's obviously a huge fan base for it now.
Oh, big time.
With the documentary?
I forget the documentary, but I know what you're talking about. And I think they're getting ready to do. I think that's another film they're getting ready to do, like a big 4K
probably
restoration of. It's going to be coming out soon, which I will totally get.
Yeah, a lot of the actors and stuff have been coming around at cons again because there is, because now you have generational horror where our generation is growing up and having children. Those children are going in and becoming horror fans. My kids weren't into horror until probably the It remake and like American Horror Story. Like they just didn't have a lot of subtle intro into it. Whereas like, Monster Squad's obviously something shot for kids for the most part. It's
shot for kids, but it totally plays to those guys who like love those Universal movies.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's like, I feel like
the
it's
Monster
a kid's
Kids.
movie.
Yeah,
it's a kid. Yeah, exactly. The Monster Kids.
Remember the kid in Salem's Lot that had the bedroom and he was like making the mess and stuff? So there's that whole there's that late 70s, 80s generation of kids that were consumed with monsters that wanted to make them, and you've got people like Norman Cabrera and Steve Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
Like these guys are now pro makeup guys that grew up that way. They grew up like being these monster nerds.
Well, even like big time, like even big time like filmmakers. Like if you don't. I mean, when I watch Steven Spielberg's like earlier stuff, here's a kid who grew up watching King Kong.
Yeah,
and
he loves movies. Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like you can totally tell where they got their stuff from, where they got their inspiration. And it's funny, like you talking about with a lot of people, fans out there, like the Universal movies, Universal thing with Frankenstein and Dracula and stuff. I mean, they were big in the 30s and the 40s. But then, the
70s brought them back,
the 60s and the 70s, this huge resurgence of like being able to show stuff on TV finally, and monster magazines.
Yeah.
these movies from 30 years ago just came back like they were just out, and people were lining up to go see them.
They really were. I mean, when Frankenstein came out and the tagline says "the monster is loose," like people were leaving town. Like they really thought there was a monster loose, and I think that Hollywood at that time sort of saw like how much impact these movies could have, and so they ran with it, and obviously became like the center for our culture nowadays. But those black and whites, those Universal horror, they were that time period's Marvel movies, like the big blockbusters.
Yeah, tying all movies in. Like they were the first ones to do like that whole expanded universe stuff.
Yeah, well, it's like, oh, well, we did Frankenstein, Dracula, and the Mummy, and they're like, oh, what if we put the two of them together? You know what I mean? Like somebody came along and was like, let's put the two of them together, and you know, they're all from the novels, which are public domain at that point, and so you can kind of like fill in the blanks on the story however you want to do it. But with them coming back in the 70s, now you've got journalism is big in every country now, like publishing, newspapers, writing, reviewing, movie critics. And so, I mean, them making the rounds on TV, like you were saying, making the rounds at the drive-in, like the next generation came through and became big fans of it. And then Hammer, you know, obviously, you know, doing their own versions of it all, like rejuvenating it again. And
I feel like Hammer is going to go through. If they haven't, they're going to go through they're going to go through that too. You know, those guys who, like,
the dark romanticism around like the castle-driven stuff, and you know, the spooky nature of things. And
I'm really ready for the new age guys who grew up watching like those gothic horror films and like the Roger Corman, Vincent Price films that like start making some cool stuff.
Well, there's been a lot of chatter, you know, on those, and I think obviously who's going to lead the charge is going to be Del Toro with his Frankenstein.
Yeah,
I think Del Toro is going to lead the charge with it, and then if it goes through and comes out and does great, it'll probably ignite. You know what I mean? Everybody else trying to jump in to do their Robert Rodriguez or whoever to come in and do a monster movie again.
Well, I think that, and I also think so. I want to say it's Mike Flanagan, but I know they're working on a Fall of the House of Usher show, I think, for Netflix, like kind of in the vein of like Hill House.
Yeah, I could see Flanagan doing that.
I think that could be huge for like bringing that gothic stuff. But yeah, totally those monster movies. And
his Midnight Mass was pretty awesome.
We were me and this guest I have, Danielle, were talking about. That's the version of Salem's Lot that we wanted. That we finally got.
I think he's an East Coast guy too. So
I think he is.
But he's tight with Del Toro, and he's tight. So you know, in those back channels, these conversations are being had because there's opportunities, and you know, Universal is only expanding. You know what I mean? Yeah. So they definitely probably are ready to like bring that stuff back in a huge way.
I hope they do, because like I said, it's such good stuff, and it's such a cool way they could do it. I think, and there's guys trying, like Richard Stanley was a guy who was trying to do his, he was trying to do what Roger Corman did with the Poe films.
Yeah.
You know, get his actor.
Yeah.
Corman got Price.
Yeah.
To do all those Poe films, Team of Lygia, you know, Mask of the Red Death, which is my favorite out of those. But he was trying to do that with Nicolas Cage when he did The Color Out of Space. He was trying to do like his H.P.
Lovecraft stuff,
And I don't know what happened. I think the one he was going to do was Dunwich Horror. That was going to be the next one he did. And that's been, you know, it's been a couple of years now. I haven't heard anything.
If I've learned anything from trying to work in film, is that it is like trying to start a band and keep the band together.
Yes.
And play and improve.
Which has got to be hard.
And practice.
I was in a band.
Yeah.
It's very difficult.
That's why I brought it up, because I know you would relate to it. Because it's very much like that. It's very much like, okay, are all the pieces and parts in place and working together well? And if you have one piece or part fall out of line, your entire system, you know, drops. And when momentum drops, it usually stops. And so I think that's why a lot of times we hear these rumors or see this stuff, and then you just don't see it. Because somewhere along the lines, you know, the pieces just fell out of it. So the fact that any movie gets made and distributed and is good and we enjoy it and remember it and watch it again, I think is a miracle.
Yeah.
Because of how much goes into the stuff, you know?
Yeah. I mean, my brother-in-law, Eddie, who actually edits the show, I mean, he was doing a lot of stuff like trying to get into film and stuff like that. And I've, Bob Tennell, who I've met, they'll be the first ones to tell you. It's like, yeah, you just see the movies that actually got made. You don't see the infinite number of projects that never even that get all the way up to pre-production, and then whoop.
I think Pumpkinhead sat on a shelf for like 5 years or something like that for a while.
Yeah.
And no one understood the movie. Like they kind of like, what is this? How do we sell this? And the name changed from like Vengeance to Pumpkinhead, and then the company like sold. I was reading an old Fangoria article about it, and it was a really, I think it's a classic.
Oh, it's a great movie.
And you've got Stan Winston directing, and I think the monster is great.
Still, like it still, even the way they did it, like it's still. I mean, Lance Henriksen.
He's awesome.
It's still like it looks. Like I love how it looks like old and just I don't know, like
it does look grainy. It's got that good 80s look to it.
It looks like a real like witch tale.
Yeah,
because it kind of is. Basically,
it is a witch tale. Yeah, it's based on an old poem or something somebody wrote. I'm not even sure if they know who the author is of it, but like that's a movie from when I was reading the article that like we almost didn't see it. Like it almost probably never, and it was a completed film just sitting there waiting to find the right distribution house. And then when things got moved around and sold, it got re-recognized and was like, oh, well, we should put this out. And now you have, something that essentially is an intellectual property character. Like you could do a lot with Pumpkinhead as a toy, as a creature. Yeah.
Because so you actually worked on the Pumpkinhead comic, didn't you?
Yeah. We did some covers. We did a cover for, like the collected edition, the trade. We did the cover for it. You never know what's going to make the cover of the trade of the graphic novel, like the collected. And so whenever some of our work will make the cover of something like that, it's always like a nice surprise because, once you get paid and do the work, it's kind of like your hands are washed of it. So to see it reappear again as the trade cover, you're like, awesome, because now whenever they reprint that, like that'll be the cover. And so it's kind of cool to like add to the Zenoscope of it, to be a part of a contributing factor to the lore,
Yeah.
The books, like me and Neil both work with American mythology. He's working on the Fright Night stuff.
Yeah, which looks really cool.
Yeah, it's nice to see him back on that.
Yeah.
But that company puts out Night of the Living Dead comics, Hatchet comics, Willy's Wonderland, and a couple others. And I think they're going to be putting out My Bloody Valentine too.
Nice.
And so just being able to do like even that one pumpkin cover, just being able to do one thing on this lore is always it's a dream come true to be able to add to something that if someone becomes a fan of it, they're eventually going to stumble on like your stuff that was a part of it. So
and that's super cool, man. Like that's like being. I say a couple times, like I said a couple times on the show, like the horror community, like the horror fan community, is such like a cool community to be a part of and talk to people and. Everyone who's like a fan is just like they're in a fan like all levels.
It's their lifestyle.
It is, and it's super cool that like you're putting your love for it back into
totally, man.
You know what I mean? Like I'm wondering one day there might be a kid one day talking to someone like me. It's like, all right, what got you into horror? Well, this guy, I saw this Pumpkinhead comic. And it was all so awesome. Like, what is this? And then I went and I found this old movie that was super cool. And then
that's all it is.
Down the rabbit hole. That's like a cool. That's going to happen one day.
Totally will, man. I mean, that's why I do it is because I grew up with so much of it and loving it. And it was like, you sort of like will yourself into it. You know what I mean? Like it's not just like, oh, I'm a fan, I bought it, and I went and I saw the movie and I bought the t-shirt, and like you love it that much that like you just think about it all the time, and then you create something, and then you create something else, and then years go by and you create something else, and before you know it, you start like sort of finding your path into this stuff. You're doing your podcast now, and you can't get away from it. So you evolve like what you do with it. You know what I mean? So you're no longer 13 and dressing up in costume. You're 33 and putting out like review material on something. But yeah, it is a lifestyle. I find that fans of whatever they're fans of, it usually becomes like their world. You know what I mean? Like they sort of fill the gaps in their life with the stuff, and it's essential. I think it's essential to dreaming new ideas and new creations for everyone to enjoy. Rather than, I mean, you can remake something and you can reimagine it, you can rehash it, but it's just a platform for creating at the end of the day. And what you create is up to you. And it is like an endless possibilities with it. So I think that's what's really cool about all of it, is like the endless possibilities of it. I whenever I created something, I was always like, okay, well, I love this, this, and this. But a lot of times, and I've said this before, like when we create comic book ideas or concepts, we're sort of creating them not from completely from a place of what we've always liked. Oh, well, I've always liked this, so I just went and created this that's like it. We will try to create something that we don't see. That, well, I love this and this, but this hasn't been done yet, as far as I know. You know what I mean? And so that's the direction we try to create where there's an absence.
And that's super cool. So what are you currently working on? And what would be like you talked like Pumpkinhead was kind of like a dream project. What are some other dream projects that you'd love to be a part of?
Well, the My Bloody Valentine is a classic slasher. You know, it's like the minor, so there's not a lot like that. And I'm excited for American Mythology to put that comic out because I'll get to do covers for that.
Nice.
But I have been working on like Hatchet, the comic covers, which Victor Crowley's played by Kane Hodder, obviously are one of my favorite Jasons, and
yeah, definitely my favorite Jason.
Yeah, they've been the guy that did it the longest. You know what I mean? And he exudes the personality, the breathing. You know what I mean? Like, so working on Hatchet is, and I love Adam Green because he's kind of like a do-it-yourselfer to make all those films, and so just being able to work on the comic, and like I'm not writing it or anything like that, but just to draw like some covers for it is awesome because I love Kane. It's a practical slasher, he's in makeup and stuff like that. So it's kind of getting to add to that. And I got to work on some Night of the Living Dead, official Night of the Living Dead comic covers, which was sort of stressful because it's like, making the Living Corpse, which has kind of done its thing. Like now you're full circle working on Night of the Living Dead, and you're like, well, this is the Romero stuff is what inspired it all. So now you're here, and it's like, well, what do I do? Like everything's been done. Like how do I, like you're trying to capture the ghoul versus like, the Walking Dead zombie, which is full rot and the special effects, where the Night of the Living Dead stuff was much more subtle, and so you're drawing zombies or ghouls, and you want them, you have to make them look a little more human because they were more human in the film,
Yeah.
Obviously the later stuff was needed, but you're working on night, so you're trying to stay in that universe. And so for me, it was a challenge to work on stuff that I love so much because I'm kind of like, oh shit, now it's my turn.
Yeah.
What do I do? How do I add to this?
How do I add to it, but still like keep up like the reverence of it?
Totally. I did get Image 10 is the company that owns Night of the Living Dead, and they did give me some feedback that I did one cover, and it was kind of like a recreation of some of the classic stills. And I just kind of put it together in a kind of mosaic sort of way. And someone over at Image 10 said it was the best cover they had ever seen for a Night of the Living Dead comic, which I thought I was just rehashing old images. I'm like, I'm drawing the same little girl with the shadowy eye. They loved it. You know what I mean? So, but I'll never not give it my best because I love this stuff so much. And it's kind of like do or die. You're up at the plate. The bases are loaded. It's the bottom of the ninth, and you want to hit a home run. So you stay up all night and come up. And a lot of times I'll come up with 2 or 3 concepts that I like, and then I give them to the editor to kind of throw away a couple of them and pick the one that he likes. So had a pretty good run with that so far. And I mean, I'm always dreaming, that one day I'll get to work on a Phantasm comic, or one day I'll get to work on this comic.
I was just talking about Phantasm.
Yeah,
I was like,
it's another one that is strong.
That's a great. Okay, so Phantasm is another one that's super good, and it's one of those movies where like you either love it or you hate it.
Yeah,
I'm in the love it category, and it's actually one of the other movies. It's one of the franchises where I think, me personally, I think the sequel is better.
The sequel is phenomenal,
than the original, which a lot of movies can't really say. I think the only other movie that kind of could go that route to me in the horror franchise would be like Bride of Frankenstein. A lot of people consider better than Frankenstein. Okay. I am not one of those people, but I love him.
I hate that you only see her for a little bit at the end.
Yeah.
You selling me this movie that she's in and she's not in it.
It's also like Bride of Frankenstein clearly is a better movie.
Yeah.
But nothing's ever gonna beat that
first one,
that scene of him turning around for the first time. And that's just like it's sorry. But no, like, Phantasm would be totally cool.
I love it, yeah. And you got Coscarelli, he's still very much in love with the material and the concept, and he's not like Tom Holland's still very much into Fright Night. Like these guys aren't running away from what they've created. They love what they've created. And so I think there's always going to be a place.
And they're adding more to it, because I didn't get it yet, but Tom Holland actually wrote he just wrote like a novel.
Yeah,
based off of Jerry the Vampire's point of view.
Yeah, I think it's like some kind of prequel.
Okay,
his adventures with his familiar. Like I'm not sure what the plot is, but yeah, I just think it's cool that he's working on it again.
Same.
That he's back.
Super cool. And like I said, I don't know. There's been a lot of like. For some reason, like there's been a lot of like buzz around Fright Night.
Yeah, I think people like Evil Dead had a lot of buzz for a long time. Everyone was getting back into Ash again, and the cosplay was high. The comics were running wild. Raimi was getting bigger and better work from Spider-Man and beyond, and so you're looking at Peter Jackson as well. And so people are going back to the Dead Alives and the Bad Taste and stuff, and so. Yeah, it's like it's somebody else's turn, and now it's Fright Night's turn, what I mean, to get those resurgences. And I feel like the same thing is coming for like My Bloody Valentine and Monster Squad, like we were talking about. Like these things still hold up, and the crowd is always looking for the next thing to get back into again. Yeah, and you're seeing a lot of podcasts pop up and reviewers and social media influencers that are like all horror only, and the VHS is back, so there's no greater time I think than now. First reaction stuff has been really big, which I actually think is really cool. I watched a young lady do a first reaction of like Terminator. I thought that was very entertaining. Yeah, Terminator's great. I love Terminator. But Fright Night to me is like if I'm not counting Dracula films. Yeah. Fright Night's probably in my top like 3 of vampire films. Yeah, for me it's Near Dark. I always thought that Near Dark's good. And I love Lost Boys. Like I don't know what it is about Lost Boys. I think it's I think it's like the brow makeup and like the period, the music, and like it's user friendly too, because like it kind of like you can kind of put yourself in the family. And then it's like, okay, the seedy side of life is, I don't know. Like I've always liked Lost Boys, but I think it's a little too easy to go to that for a favorite. So Near Dark to me has always been this one that I always tell people about, because I'm like, and female director and Bill Paxton and a lot of good stuff in there. A lot of good stuff. The story is like really cool. The characters, to me, Lost Boys, because I've seen it so many times, and I saw it for such a long time before I even knew Near Dark existed. Like Near Dark kind of fell into like just stayed in the shadow of Lost Boys for so long. Yeah. Well, it missed its mark because it didn't advertise itself as a vampire film. Yeah. Which is the genius in it, because you're kind of doing it subtly. You're not trying to like over top it. You know what I mean? Like, Lost Boys was very much sold as like, oh, yo, these guys are partying all night. Something's up. Yeah. But Near Dark is kind of like this. What is this? You know what I mean? So, well, I think Lost Boys is clearly like the MTV generation. Yeah, the rock star thing. Yeah, so that and it just like it still holds up. It still holds up on its own. Yeah, it's like I watched that movie and I'm like, I can't believe Jerry. Was it Jerry? Not Jerry Bruckheimer. Was it Jerry Bruckheimer? No, who made the really bad Batman movie? Joel Schumacher. Yeah. I'm like, this is a Joel Schumacher film. Yeah. It's fantastic. Yeah. And you're right. It still holds up. Yeah. The parts that are really violent or really good, really creepy. But like my favorite line in Near Dark is when he's asking Lance Hendrickson, he's like, how old are you? And he's like, let's just put it this way, I fought for the South. Yeah. And he's like, what? He's like, we keep odd hours. But that bar scene, with Paxton in there, and it's like, I hate it when he ain't been shaved. It's like there's these hillbilly vampires, and to me, it's like that's scarier than like a slick, sexy, hypnotic one, because I see him coming a mile away. Yep. But like the Near Dark guys, I'm like, whoa, I didn't see. Like, oh, they're like these leches that playing music. I've been in bars where there's guys like Bill Paxton. Yeah, and from that movie. Yeah.
Like,
You're
yeah, they're
waiting
not
for it.
vampires, but you still gotta be like, I gotta wait, man. How many
Yeah.
beers he had? Like,
Yeah.
he's on like number. When he starts getting shots, I'm gonna go to the other end of the block.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great. That movie's great. You can believe those characters.
Yes,
you know what I mean.
absolutely.
They are in costume, but like they look like people you may run into.
Yes,
and that's what, and I think that's why it's so captivating still, because it's kind of like unsuspecting, and so it kind of catches you off guard.
Yeah, very cool. Like I said, better. Like, even though Lost Boys is more like
known,
like the
it's a sexier film.
Yeah, there you go. The characters are still way like more developed and they're dark.
Yeah.
They're way creepier. And like I said, yeah, Bill Paxton, man, he's R.I.P.
What is he? R.I.P. is the only guy that's been killed by an alien and a predator or something like that.
I think you're right.
He's been in a few of those things.
That's right. Holy shit, yeah.